Hello there, and welcome to Speaking of Our Words, radio programming that brings you the wide range of voices, stories, and forms of local writers, and offering you some insight into their creative process. My name is Dave Gourdoux. I'm a member of the Kenosha Writers Guild, and I am your host. Today we have a special guest in the studio, Kenosha Writers Guild member Bob Katzman, who will be dedicating the entire program to Bob's work. Hello, Bob.
Hello, David. I shouldn't do that. Hello, David.
So, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm born in 1950, and I've been self-employed since '62. I left home when I was 14, and let's see, my career quickly. I sold firecrackers in grammar school, and then when I got caught doing that to make money, because I didn't get an allowance. Then I started selling coins to my classmates and coin supplies, then left home, and in high school resumed selling protest buttons. I went to the U of C High School, and in order to do that, I had to pay for it, which was a lot of money, so I opened up a newsstand my second year, and unlike all of these spoiled rich children that wouldn't talk to me for the whole 4 years, I stayed there. For 20 years, it became Bob's Newsstand, and it was a chain.
You started at your second year of high school?
Yeah.
So you were like 14 at the time?
Well, the year before, I was a dishwasher, and I was selling fruit in a Greek grocery store for 77 cents an hour. I figured it out, and this is no good. So I decided to become self-employed. And when you're self-employed, you don't count the hours or you'll kill yourself. Did that 20 years, but in between, so that was 65 and 69, I opened up a kosher delicatessen. And then in 75, I was 25, and I decided to start a distribution company in America's largest distribution company, which was the Charles Levy Circulating Company. And my supplier was not pleased. Let's see, we can't defame the dead. So we competed for 5 years. I competed for the right to be their competition, and their goal was to remain a monopoly like they'd been for 90 years. And they lost, and they had to pay, and they also had to give me one of their stores. And then 5 years later, when they had the opportunity, they put me out of business. This is holding a grudge.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in between, just circumstantially and without intent, I became the first distributor in America of gay magazines, which you couldn't find in any newsstands, and they couldn't find any distributors. And I needed material. And a man in Florida, publisher of Blue Boy, asked me if I wanted 3 copies for gay people at the U of C, and he said, I won't give you 3, but I will give you 1,500 at a better percentage if you distribute them. And you tell me if I'm telling you more than you want to know. But anyway, this simple thing, it wasn't for the gay people. The main thing to me in retrospect is that I treated them like they were like anybody else, but nobody else was treating them like anybody else, including today, when Germany voted on gay marriage. I mean, today, and this is in 1975. Well, you can't make a long story short, but I won't go any farther than this because I don't think I've done anything more important than this. My mother was an interior decorator. Somehow it didn't dawn on me that all the men she worked with were gay. Just, I didn't think about it. But I went to her, and I had 1,500 copies of Blue Boy, and I said, Mom, where are the gay people? It's like asking her where the gerbils are. I treated it like a colony. Where are the Navajos? And she said, go to Clark, and she knew. She said, go to Clark and Fullerton, and if you're going to sell magazines, just go into the bars and the bookstores. And I did this. And my very first exposure to a customer was in a bar, and it was dark, and there was a man behind the bar wearing a sequined one-piece woman's bathing suit. And it was, there's light going around, so it was all sparkly. And he was wearing ostrich feathers. Mm-hmm. And he had a mustache. He was tall. And this is the first contact I had with a gay person as a possible customer. And I just looked at her, and I said, I'm the distributor for Blue Boy. Would you be interested? And what I didn't understand was how connected the gay community was. He immediately took 5, and then he told me where else to go. And then he called ahead, and every place I went took them. Everybody. They wanted me to be successful. And then they said, why don't you carry this from Cleveland and this from New York City? And I ended up with a stable of a dozen gay magazines.
Wow.
And they were distributed in drugstores, and I had regular clients, bookstores all over. I had 60 accounts eventually. And the business grew to $1 million by 1980. And this is 37 years ago. And if you go anywhere in America and you can buy a magazine that's gay, it's because of that.
Wow.
I broke something.
Pretty impressive legacy you have on your record. Now, how is it that you came to live in Racine, Wisconsin at this?
There's a switch. Because I wanted to meet more German people. No, why did I move here? Why did I move here? I'm self-consciously Jewish, which we are 1/2 of 1% here. That's what we are. So you got to look hard to catch one. My wife and I and children had camped here and gone to Bayfield and everywhere. It's a beautiful place. People go to Vermont for the color. You don't have to go to Vermont. It's just big state. Vermont's a little state. You can get splashed on the highways. This is wonderful. And you can buy a home here for nothing. It's free. Living in Racine compared to where we lived. And so with our Social Security, we moved up here, and my grandchildren, I have 5 grandchildren, 4 children. And it was economic, but also this is where we wanted to spend the rest of our lives. So, which turned out to be 23 months because my wife died on Mother's Day. And that's where I am today, which is almost 7 weeks ago. I don't really make any plans anymore.
I understand. I appreciate you being here and sharing your work with us at this kind of difficult time you're going through. Let's talk about how did you become a writer?
Oh.
And what have you written so far?
I don't think you become a writer. I have opinions. My mother and father, though very different people and descended from different parts of the Jewish Pale in Europe, Poland, Lithuania, very different areas. Both of them were storytellers, good storytellers, and different though. And I grew up with different versions of how to tell a story. And in 58, I wrote a poem. The first thing I actually wrote was for Arbor Day. It's a tree, but of course it's by a tree. It's not about a weed. I just kept writing and writing, and I going to art school. I went to art school for 6 years. And how did I become a writer? I had a life filled with violence, and received and distributed. And I left home in the middle of the night on June 8th, 1964, because the violence in my house. And I became a writer. I think the only thing, Wayne Brasler at the University of Chicago, I wasn't much of a success at the school, but he was in the journalism class and he saw something. And I had a column and I was the cartoonist and I interviewed the teachers. And one time I compared the assistant principal to a chipmunk, and all the teachers wanted to be interviewed and they wanted to be an animal. So that was a funny result, but I got out of that. I mean, what if somebody didn't like the animal you made them into? Well, anyway, I wrote all the time, and I don't have a short life. I graduated and applied to the University of Illinois. They said, okay, and 3 months later I had cancer. And my Christmas vacation, and the Vietnam War was on, and my life changed December 20th, 1968, because of that. Why am I a writer? I've had 37 operations that are random, and I was born that way because somebody at Weiss Memorial Hospital had this brilliant idea that if you have this Hiroshima amount of x-rays on an infant, it will cure swollen thyroid glands. And tens of thousands of people benefited from this thinking, and 2 of them were Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel. And I was in Roger Ebert's class for film criticism at the U of C, and he died of the salivary gland cancer. And I used to complain to my doctor about all these random operations, and he said, you should stop complaining. 90% of the people are dead. And that was a pivotal moment. It's like, okay, you could have not had them, be dead, and not meet your grandchildren. So there are moments that demarcate your life. So why do you become a writer? Because maybe you have something to say, to warn other people, or to help them.
Well, you certainly had a fascinating life, and everything you write, I think, is memoir, right? Things that have happened to you.
I don't write fiction.
Right, you don't write fiction at all.
No.
So, so you have a lot of rich background to draw from. So, could you explain to us what you've prepared to read first today?
Yeah, 1 second. Well, I began writing this during Shiva. Shiva is like a wake right after my wife died. I mean, it's kind of amazing. I had this story in me most of my life, and I had read that this person, whose name was Audrey, had died. I found her obituary, and I just found it, and it triggered this intense story. But my way of writing is to write it in my mind, and at a certain point, write it down. And there was no certain point because I was married, and the story is pretty intense. And on Wednesday, following her funeral, on Sunday, I got up in the morning and I wrote 3,000 words. And writers know that you don't do that.
Right.
It was like an avalanche of words. Ended up being 4,500 words when I was finished with it. But what I remember is how effortless it was to write this. It's like getting it out, getting rid of it, which you'll see. I didn't want to forget to say that this is part of a book I just finished, which is called I Didn't Go Quietly, A Life of Resistance. And I am trying to find someone to help me make it into an ebook, if that person exists. I refer to Shabby Town, and Shabby Town, the easiest thing to say is it's a imaginary place I created as a refuge to maintain sanity as a 10-year-old, and it never went away. And it's a place I would go to visit people in my imagination. So Shabby Town was not a geographic place. It was a psychic place. And so when you hear me refer to it a couple times, that's what I'm talking about.
I remember last time you were on the show, I think you read a piece that took place partially in Shabby Town.
Well, I created it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I changed the title of the book, too.
So why don't you go ahead and read first what you've selected for today.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Audrey, pink bunny slippers, her cat, and the God's Eye. I was reading an online obituary page a while ago and saw that Audrey, my Audrey, by then 86, had died. It sent a shiver through me, and I glanced over at the God's Eye I've kept with me whenever I've moved over the past half-century. It rests about 5 feet away from me, intricately woven multicolored yarn with a fine detail in a Native American style, using 3-foot-long slender branches tied together in the shape of a 6-pointed star. It is a spiritual and ritual object thought to have magical powers by the ancient Pueblo tribes in the Southwest. It is thought to possess the power to be able to see and understand that which an ordinary person cannot see. Audrey, I thought to myself, now you're really gone from me, aren't you? The pain within me was so real, so deep. She was someone I would often go to see in Shabby Town, when I needed to remind myself that whatever else was wrong with me, with my life, a woman with fine qualities like Audrey, and Jesus, man, so beautiful too, who was willing to give me a second look, well, okay, a lot more than a second look, then maybe I had something valuable about me that she wanted too, if only for a moment in time. Audrey. Audrey, that picture of you, that little old lady scrunched up in a hospital bed. Why had that newspaper, or whatever online things are called now, no idea of how incredible you once were, what you were really like? so long ago? The smile that radiated from your big brown eyes and your soft, wide mouth. So kissable a mouth. Soft lips, Audrey. You had such soft lips. Soft everything. I'm going back to visit Shabby Town. Gotta see you one more time. See you as you were to me 1,000,000 years ago. See your pink bunny slippers, your wide hips. Oh man, here I go. In 1969, just about every morning at 7, a 30-ish woman who lived a block west of my wooden newsstand in Hyde Park would begin her special little shuffle toward me to buy her daily New York Times. After the first few times she arrived, and I noticed her, because how could I not notice her, I sort of looked west at the brownstone apartment buildings around that morning time to see if she was coming. No question who it was once she began her steady trek toward me. About 5 feet tall, short dark hair cut like a professional woman would have done, who didn't want to bother with her hair in the morning, thick gold wire-rimmed glasses that magnified her lovely eyes, no makeup, which her cushy, pouty mouth and smooth white skin didn't need, wearing a long pink bathrobe, big fluffy pink bunny slippers, holding a large cup of coffee that had this European aroma flowing from it when she came close enough for me to inhale it. And she did come close enough for me to do that, and her own fresh aroma too, like she had just stepped out of a hot shower. I like to imagine that. Slipped on her pink bunny robe, grabbed her coffee cup, and came shuffling along to get her daily dose of liberal East Coast news. From me, her local paper boy or paper person or newspaper slave, and far younger but extremely polite local admirer of everything about her. She'd pay me the 50 cents, always 2 silver Washington quarters pressed into my calloused hand, her smaller hand slightly damp. Scan at the big New York Times headline of the day, sip coffee from her mug, sometimes wrinkle her nose disapprovingly if she didn't like whatever the political news was that morning. Then she'd turn to look up at me, smile her wide smile with so many white teeth, slightly stained by coffee, pat my arm or whatever part of me was nearest to her hand, and then she'd shuffle west. Then she'd turn west to shuffle back home. I'd watch her shuffle home. Her hips had this interesting rhythm when she walked away, almost musical, maybe some old 50s song playing in her memory. She knew I was watching, even though I tried to be discreet about it. One day, she unexpectedly turned back while I was looking at her, and she caught me, looked into my wide, surprised eyes, and she laughed. I was so embarrassed, but she wasn't. I think she always knew I was looking. Some women just know what attractive things they have and assume that men admire that something, whatever it is. Audrey had a lot to admire. One day after she asked me, and I told her that, yeah, I owned the newsstand and that I was the Bob of Bob's Newsstand, like it said on the black and white wooden stand I painted in my high school workshop and then nailed up on the newsstand's roof 3 years before, and that I was 19. Audrey then told me her name was Audrey, that she was a therapist, that she was 38, and from her very distinct accent told me that she was from Brooklyn. For most people who are not in cars and walk right up to my stand to buy a newspaper, I'd automatically take their coins with one hand and with my other hand swiftly fold the newspaper in half and slide it right under their arm so that they could just take off and run for the Illinois Central train to downtown Chicago. I pretty much memorized all my regular customers' newspaper preferences, which pleased them, and I was very fast about the whole transaction. Just a little chit-chat and they were gone. I never attempted to do that with Audrey because she was holding her pink robe closed with one hand and had her coffee cup in the other hand, and if I tried to slip a New York Times under her arm holding the robe together, it would open up and show me a whole lot more than she intended to show me while in pursuit of her daily printed fix. I assumed she would feel that way because she saw how I waited on the other customers. If I was busy when she appeared on any particular morning, I never asked her if I could do this most common of experienced news vendor's actions with her. I did imagine what she might look like if I did do that, and perhaps she did too. But both of us were silent about it, and I just put the Times in her hand when she gave me the 2 quarters. I was polite in my lust. Audrey, being twice as old as I was, me born in 1950, she born in 1931, at the beginning of the Great Depression and a decade before World War II. I would never dream of putting any of my customers in some embarrassing situation, no matter what my imagination wanted, and so Audrey and I went on this way for a while. I marveled at how different the situation was for me at that point in my life, when remembering how impossible it was for me to get noticed by any of the attractive girls in my fancy private school, especially when they knew I ran a grungy, pathetic newsstand and that I was never going to go to Harvard, ever. Yet at the newsstand, very nice-looking women, those same stuck-up high school teenage girls mother's age, or Audrey's age, and older, would flirt with me all the time. Married women, nurses going off duty from the University of Chicago Medical School, working-class women coming off the night shift somewhere, just all sorts of older women were a little aggressive and asking me questions about, when was I off work? And was I married? And did I have a girlfriend? And my lifting all those heavy bundles of newspapers sure kept me in good shape, and all that kind of uncomfortable stuff. A world of difference from the total indifference of the girls I tried to take out a year before. My battered $300, 7-year-old 1962 gunmetal blue Buick Electra 225 didn't tip the scales in my favor either. I didn't change much, but those middle-aged women's lives sure did. 20 years after they were the hot chicks or prom queens or whatever they were back in 1949. A little rounder, a few lines in their foreheads and around their eyes and mouths. Maybe life was kind of dull and dreary for some of those women. Maybe their long-ago Prince Charming turned out to be actually a toad, a boring, snoring toad. I never responded to any invitations or stuff like that from my flirtatious customers because it was a bad policy to sleep with married women, or even single regular customers in general, especially if their husbands or boyfriends were also customers of mine. Not every opportunity was a golden one, and making politically influential local Hyde Park people angry with me could also endanger my valuable city news vendor's license. Audrey had a Turkish boyfriend, Farouk. Met him once while he was shopping with her in a grocery store when lovely Audrey was wearing actual clothes that made her all the more alluring to my teenaged imagination. They had a definition to what the pink robe concealed. Farouk. He was a big guy who looked like he stepped out of a Camel cigarette commercial with pale, tan, desert-colored, two-pocketed shirts, sleeves rolled up to show off his thick, muscular biceps, dusty blue jeans, and who was, he told me, an archaeologist. Very tall, wore hiking boots, thick black mustache, thick Turkish accent, deep voice, wide shoulders, perhaps from digging through all those hot desert sands searching for dead things from lost civilizations. Them standing together, her curvy self 5 feet tall, him a muscular, vertical 6'4" or whatever, was annoying for me to contemplate in other circumstances, besides their serenely shopping together in the grocery store. Well, I didn't know or want to know any more about Mr. Adventure. Her pink bunny boots were more of a fascination to me, frankly. I liked sexy Audrey, but all I did was sell her a newspaper every morning, and admired her very fine ass wiggling as she walked back home. The arrangement was working out well, and I had no plans to change it. Then Audrey came by late one evening, and she asked me to do her a favor. Beware of sexy therapists asking favors. She was off to some Native American art and culture convention in San Francisco with her charming gravedigger, Farouk, and would I please consider feeding her cat, Feline, at night after I closed down the newsstand? Audrey said she trusted me after a year of our warm, fleeting conversations, and that it would be a very kind thing for me to do for a very good customer. I imagined she was subtly wiggling her very fine ass as she was speaking to me, even though she was facing me, in order to persuade me to respond positively to her in my fevered state. Perceptive therapist. Not such an easy thing to do, since I hated cats. An evolutionary mistake. No one ever had a cat. A cat had them. You can come home, not come home. A cat doesn't give a good goddamn. Annoying humans are irrelevant to their lives, and it was such an inconvenience to the superior cats that they were dependent on their so-called owners to feed them. The only animal to effectively display their condescension and an attitude of irrelevance regarding people. They made obvious their antagonized, mewing resentment of any effort to thwart their hunting for delicious songbirds to kill under the cover of darkness. But I digress. Under Audrey's compelling aura, her liquid, magnified brown eyes searching mine, I instantly agreed to do her bidding, and she smiled her wide smile, wide and soft, kissable, and wordlessly inviting me to find out about that some time. Well, she pressed her house key into my hand with the same gentle pressure she used to give me her 2 silver quarters every morning for her New York Times. I closed my fingers around the key and told her not to worry, her eyes still penetrating mine. Audrey slowly squeezed my own not too inconsiderable bicep, like I was some dumb but healthy animal she was considering acquiring, perhaps. Nearly 5'9", internationally agreed upon height for Jewish males, whether they won a Nobel Prize or robotically sold a Wall Street Journal to a passing car every morning like some capitalist drone. About 155 pretty solid pounds, muscular hands permanently covered with black newsprint, my face and arms burnished from the sun each morning, my own dark brown hair and dark brown eyes stemming from my own desert people, thousands of years ago, possibly still wandering around the Sinai. My wary street urchin's face didn't exactly stop traffic, although it was fair to say my ramshackle newsstand did. Well, even if I might not have been gorgeous or anything, but pretty women did whisper nice things to me. They did stop and kind of lingered, and sometimes just watching me. And every so often, when it seemed not impossibly dangerous, I got kissed and other stuff. So go fly a kite, Mr. Photogenic Farouk, or a King Tut sarcophagus. For what I believed, she said, would be a week, I closed my newsstand in the dark, because it was late October in 1969, getting darker, earlier, and somewhat wearily, dragged myself to Audrey's second-floor apartment to feed her beloved feline. No conversation, kept my dark thoughts to myself. On some windy nights, the black branches stretching bony fingers from the tall and leafless trees just outside of Audrey's multi-pane glass windows would repeatedly and loudly scratch against the old-fashioned, not quite transparent glass. Antique glass, I guess. I never bothered to turn on the lights. Small place, cat food in the kitchen, right around the corner from the door, Audrey told me. I could see well enough in the moonlight to do my assignment. Leather couch, smack against the wall under the big east window, to catch the sunrise, I suppose. Some comfy armchairs facing that couch. Short coffee table between them, covered, totally covered, with books I'd never read, books falling off of the old scratched wooden coffee table and piling up on the floor. Ancient Palestine, Near East sites, Assyrian civilization, biblical Egyptian dynasty monuments, conversational Aramaic, yeah, real bathroom reading sort of books, endless obsessions with digging up the dead. Art on the walls from her world travels, some pictures here and there of Audrey at various ages, and I could see she was getting better with time. African fabrics and a Native American God's eye. Strange, primitive, and compelling to look at. That was very cool. Definitely caught my eye, though I had no idea what it was. Not then. Night after night after night, at or about 8 p.m., robotically feeding the damned cat, my arms and shoulders aching from lifting all the heavy bundles of newspapers, my eyes drooping with weariness from rising at 4 a.m. to prevent the evil newspaper truck drivers from stealing some of my newspapers out of the dozens of tightly wire-bound bundles of Chicago Tribunes and Chicago Sun-Times, which would then expand to fill the new vacuum. I did what I promised Audrey I'd do. In the rain, in the cold, in my day's end exhaustion, I forgot which day it was. Like the indifferent cat would ever bother to tell me, never thank me either. But there I was, soundlessly unlocking the door, Rain pounding Audrey's strange leaded windows, branches waving in the wind, crashing against the glass, the room dark as one of Farouk's tombs. I went to get a cup of feline food when I heard her high-pitched meow. Surprised me, because that cat was always silent. Then, out of the shadows, a small dark figure appeared, scaring the living shit out of me, and I recoiled from whatever the hell it was. Then my eyes adjusted. It was Audrey. Jesus H. Christ, it was Audrey. Silently she approached me, wearing what I recognized was Farouk's double-pocketed excavation shirt, except that's all she was wearing, and it hung down off of her soft shoulders like a gown, and it was open. I could barely see that, but as she grew closer to me, I could inhale Audrey's scent. Wow, she really smelled good, and I could feel her body's warmth as she neared me, and the wine, too. Water. I stood there, straight and rigid as an Egyptian obelisk. Audrey stopped in front of me, put her hands on my chest, then let them roam all over, squeezing my shoulders, my arms, caressing my face, her hands in my hair, then reaching lower and lower, squeezing my thighs and caressing other parts of the healthy, dumb animal she was considering for something. Audrey soon found what she was looking for. Then she grabbed my dirty, calloused hands, slid them under Farouk's long shirt, guiding them to rest on both of her hips, moving my hands up and down like I was her own living marionette, her hips so wide and round, her amazing ass so squeezable, my rough hands sinking into them, Audrey's small hands driving mine, pushing mine, my swooning mind racing, that the dangerous, grave-digging Farouk was sleeping in the next room. Shit, man. This was insanity? That like a towering Egyptian mummy, Farouk would awaken and crush my smaller, shaking body. Oh, God, should I go or should I stay? I was 19. She was 38. Farouk was a terror. Then wordlessly, Audrey guided my invisible hands under her shirt to her breasts. Hot skin, taut nipples, breasts big enough to bury my head between them like cosmic earmuffs. Her flesh was perspiring in the cool room, and with my hands attached to her womanly breasts as if rooted there. She raised her own hands to my head, pulled my face next to hers, her mouth open, and I quietly whispered to her, Audrey, Audrey, Jesus, Audrey, where the hell is Farouk? With her breath flowing into my lungs, looking up at me, she answered so softly I could barely hear her say, Farouk, Farouk. Farouk is far, far away, somewhere in Persia. Bob, and you are here and in my arms, so stop talking and you make love to me right now. And I gentlemanly replied, well, hell, Audrey, fuck Farouk. And with that, my strong hands came alive, freed her breast, stripped off that damn dusty shirt in one sweeping motion, throwing it over some headless antique across the room, crushed her wet mouth with mine, her mouth a furnace, her advancing tongue a strong defender, the wine so good, so a part of the taste of her, her hands in my hair, pulling my hair, grabbing my shoulders, unbuttoning my clothes, so fast, her fingers a blur, sliding my damp T-shirt up and then my jeans down like she mastered this incredible stripping of a man in an elite graduate school of sex. I kicked off my gym shoes, wriggled out of my jeans, our bodies hot now, wet now, attached now. She grabbed the rigid part of me and pulled hard. Hey, goddamn it, Audrey! And we crashed down on her cold leather couch. My arms embracing her, never leaving her, her pushing me into her as if my cock was a caged beast, entering her fiery hell, her body, her hips moving, recoiling like some 10-cent dime store bucking horse. My hard fingers clutching her ass, trying to hang on, the ride of my life, biting her lips, her nipples, our bodies sliding across each other from our sweat, her ass too big to hold on to, my lips on her neck, her mouth so wet, her tongue everywhere, on my face licking me like I was an exotic young lollipop. My firm young skin against her much older, lush, and so fine body, abruptly, she stopped bucking, then erupting, her wide hips arcing upward as if they were launched, slamming against my groin, then back, then stopping, then deep breathing, holding all of me, tracing her fingernails aimlessly on my back, looking into my eyes, far into my eyes, deeply into my mind. No glasses, long lashes, her deliciously painted eyeshadow, melting off into my searching tongue, and then God starting up again. No memory needs every single word said, every single act clinically described, some memory so intense, except that I tasted every part of Audrey, she a constantly moving target, she me, drinking me, our busy tongues skittering across each other like water bugs racing on a pond. The heat of her hips entrancing, overwhelming, my determined tongue and fingers discovering so many triggers hidden within Audrey, and what I didn't know, me then, a sexually unopened teenage encyclopedia to voracious Audrey, me a virtual clean slate, she was determined to make me drive her amazing body wherever she wanted it to go. We were on the intercourse, We were on the intercourse interstate, speeding ahead, screw the cops, weaving across the lanes, free, fast, wet, and still hungry. Then it stopped. Not sure how long I was there, or within her, or hunting for every inch of her, but it stopped. Audrey looked up at me, her skin so smooth, but now with guilty eyes. I could feel, somehow it seemed I could always feel what another person's eyes were saying to me, and Audrey's were overflowing with guilt, with sin, with her taking another man, possessing another man, a man so different than her own, so much younger, young enough to be her child, yet strong enough, old enough to make love to her for hours, or so it seemed, until Audrey got off her expressway and pulled over on the shoulder. Then she spoke, her Brooklyn voice quavering, her brown eyes crying. Oh, God damn it, Bob. How could this happen? How could you let me use you like this? I hate myself. I hate when this madness comes over me. When this hunger comes, what'll I do? Farouk can never know. He'll kill me, like he promised to do the last time he caught me. You can never speak of this. Never, never, never. You understand, you fucking paper boy? I have to think. You have to leave. Get your clothes. Get your damn clothes on and get out of here right now. No one can ever know about this. I am so, I don't know, bad, but Jesus Christ, Bob, Jesus. Then she stood up, naked, so naked, super naked, magnificent, a living sculpture of a real woman, so beautiful. My eyes drank her in. I will keep this dream of a woman within me always. Audrey came over to me still naked, shivering, so uncertain, so young, so mystified, caught up with this incredible, demanding woman, and beautiful Audrey embraced me, her warm arms grasping me against her, her wet face pressing against my chest, her tears running down my body, like a person whose frenzied fever had finally broken, and she sobbed. And then Audrey kissed me, lightly, gently, almost not touching, a goodbye kiss, a kiss with enough magic to last my lifetime. As I type these words in 2017, 48 years later, and with stunning Audrey's death, I'm free to remember, to tell someone, to celebrate a powerful woman, crazed by her need, her compulsion, so much force within her, her gift to unknowing me, what I had up to then never understood before. How fierce a woman's passion could be, that urgent sex wasn't just a guy thing, that a woman could be as hungry as a man, but also be a slave to that need, not just the guys. Audrey, I never knew. I was only 19. I silently retrieved my shirt, then politely removed Farouk's shirt from covering that headless statue, finding my shoes, my jeans, my T-shirt, hearing the hard rain, the clawing branches crashing against the old glass, leaving Audrey and the pain, knowing I was leaving Audrey, and it hurt so much in so short a time, she like a demon, she living the guilt, quivering with her sin, me in the way. I dressed, didn't button my shirt, didn't tie my gym shoes, didn't care or know or understand what had happened, and I looked at sobbing, naked Audrey, somehow more gentle, even smaller, watching me leave, and as I left, dropping her house key on a small marble table near the front door. No need for it now. Or ever again. Never saw Audrey again. No phone calls. No letters. But one day, about 5 years later, an oddly shaped package arrived at my newsstand. I was then in my middle 20s. The package was very light. No return address. Just a handwritten, Bob's Newsstand, Hyde Park, 51st and Lake Park, Chicago. By then, my little wooden shack with a teenage boy's name perched above it. That newsstand, still wood, but now much bigger, with many employees, thousands of customers, endless newspaper, TV, radio, and magazine interviews, was famous across the United States. No problem for anyone, anywhere, getting a package to me from any place in 1975. I was married by then, had a child, still living my antique existence, but totally unknowing that I was only a decade away from the end of all American newsstands by 1985, from even the death of newspapers, from years of unemployment, from being so lost again at 35, so bewildered by a modern world I didn't understand, and as uncertain as I was back when I was 19 in 1969. Standing alone, my back next to the outside wall of my newsstand, I quietly tore off the brown wrapping paper, letting it flutter to the ground, and then also the thin white tissue within. An electric tremor ran through me. It was Audrey's beautiful God's eye. How could she possibly know I wanted it? How could she ever know a secret wish like that one? And then a small yellow folded piece of paper fell to the dirt I was standing on. I picked it up, and there were these stunning words scrawled across it. Bob, faraway Bob, you'll never know how much that moment I stole from you that rainy night meant to me. It never left my mind. But I left Farouk. I started a new life. Never forgot about you, what happened, and I never will. I am happy now. I hope you are too, Bob. Not a boy anymore, are you? I knew, some way I can't explain, that my God's eye was special to you. I still can't figure that out. So here, now it's yours. Hang it on your wall somewhere. Look at it sometimes, and please remember me. And dear Bob, thank you for that one intoxicating night. Goodbye, Audrey. I held the yellow note tightly in my hand, sunk my stunned face against the soft God's eyes yarn, suddenly imagining I was inhaling the warm fragrance of Audrey, the womanly Audrey. Then slowly, I slid down the rough wooden wall of that damn newsstand. My ass hitting the dirt. And damn you, Audrey, I cried.
Well, that was really great, Bob, and it certainly was an emotional piece for all of us. I felt the same emotion as a listener and reader that I think you were feeling as somebody who'd experienced this. You know, it reminded me of something I think I'd read Hemingway say once, that there were certain things he couldn't write about until after people had died because he didn't want to hurt them. And the way the story unfolded and the way you introduced it kind of made me think of that.
Well, one, I respect people and I respect privacy, and I will never hurt anyone. I just can't do that to write something. I don't like it when I cry when I'm reading something, and I don't want people to see that part of me. That's a secret. I want them to hear the words the way I say them. I don't want people to see or hear me feeling them. It's too embarrassing. It's like somebody, ripping off your skin and looking into your heart, and you don't want it, except you can't stop it. And that's the downside of my trying to only record the truth. But then I'm forced to be in the room or wherever I was at the time. And in this there's a God's eye in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
I don't make up colorful things. And boy, Audrey, I'm almost 30 years older than Audrey now, but wow. That was a story. I never would write it. She was alive. Maybe, I wouldn't do it. I was crazy about Audrey.
Yeah. As someone who's tried, for me at least, it's extremely difficult writing about sex. And you did so exquisitely in the story. You feel every sensation, yet it never crossed the line into being pornographic. It was always very beautiful and very, very, very
This is what I wanted
honest.
when I wrote this. I realized it when those 3,000 words were coming. I wanted to be the woman. I wanted to be Audrey. I wanted women to listen, identify with me as Audrey, and feel this power to have this young boy that they were manipulating for their own pleasure. And I wanted to be the 19-year-old boy, which is a third of what I am now, less. And I wanted to be the same voice, the same person who didn't understand and wasn't aggressive and wasn't going to do anything. Besides, she was 38,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be two people. I wanted it to be exciting, and I wanted women to feel the sexual power of the situation. And I've never read anything about sex, but this wasn't about sex. This was about a woman letting go.
Right.
And just one of the reasons I mentioned the wine is so for people to understand that she somehow, whatever made her give in to her compulsion, which she said, as I wrote. I was just lately. I wanted women who have that hunger, who lust for a young guy the same way old guys lust for young girls. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted a role reversal. And the challenge for writing this story is to be the woman in a way that women would forget about me and get caught up in it. So, did you? I'm referring to a real woman across the way. You can't see her, but she's good looking and, would give Audrey competition.
So, so is this part of a new book you're working on?
Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you. I finished a book. It's called I Didn't Go Quietly, A Life of Resistance. It's 309 pages, 47 stories and poems, of which 75 pages are devoted to my wife. Not on purpose in the sense written for this. It's a gathering of things I've written over the years. But what is different, this is my 6th book. It's the first one I've ever written chronologically. And I really want to be able to figure out how to sell it, still being the antique news vendor. And if I can ever find someone to help me learn how to make an ebook, not print it, and sell it in Singapore at 2 a.m., that's what I'd like for the rest of my life, is to be able to write things that people can buy online and not have to print it. And like, I've sold 6,000 books,
Mm-hmm.
but they're heavy, and they get heavier when I'm taking them places. And I want my books to be light as air. You push a button, and you get 309
Right.
pages to break you up.
So this is your 6th or 7th book, you say?
6th.
This is your 6th. And so an evolving kind of memoir type things that really happened to you.
It's, well, what I write is autobiographical, but I'm a witness. This wasn't the story of Bob that you just heard. This is about Audrey
Oh, I completely understand.
and a goddamn cat. Talk about self-sacrificing. I hated the cat.
Yeah.
But I've met so many people, good people, bad people, fascinating people. I'm the witness. And it's kind of the, I go home and I take off my clothes and I hang my shirt in a hook. And it's got a solid foundation to go from there. And when I tell a story from my life about what other people did in response to a circumstance, or my going to them for help, which is a story I'll never read, about attacking a woman, attacking me when I was 10. I want other people to get so involved in it that they stop being themselves. And I don't care if it's a woman or a girl, that she sees the story through my eyes. And if I'm afraid, she's afraid. The gender doesn't interfere with the telling of the story. And that's why I do it.
Right.
Because it's hard.
I think that's very true. The good memoirs aren't always just about the author. They're oftentimes about the other person. In fact, more often than not, they are. So if this is your sixth book, do your books typically have a theme to them that you pick out?
Well, I know it took me forever to print the last one. I may as well say it because it's kind of tangential to this. The first one was called Bob's Newsstand because that was 20 years, and why would there be a second book? Who would give a damn about somebody who ran a newsstand? And they did. And I reprinted it 4 times. And the second book was Embracing and Escaping the Cops of Chicago, which is pretty clear. And the third book was Saul Bellow, Kosher Pickles, and the Aluminum Fortress. I can't write a story unless I get the title right. It's the trigger for me. And the fourth book was, I had the title in my head for years. I just didn't have the nerve to write it, but it's called Hot Sex and Small Change. I thought it would look good in a movie marquee, 5 words. And it was about, and it says so on the cover, how, as people who heard this, I was the opposite of popular in high school and assumed that I would become a Jewish monk. And one day, this Audrey-ish looking woman in 1967, which is September 1st, which is 50 years ago, pretty soon, this woman came by and seduced me in my newsstand, which had a bed in it. Too complicated to go into that now. Well, her name was Marie. And Marie was French. And Marie didn't speak English, although she communicated well. And I had taken 4 years of French involuntarily. It was never passed test. They just kept promoting me, get out of my class. And I remember so much French. It was stunning. It was underneath a kerosene lantern, kind of moving with the traffic and a yellow glow. September 1st, it was warm. We could hear a little box on the street in Hyde Park. I had my own personal bordello, and all the traffic's going by. And this was fabulous. I was thinking about all those rich assholes, whatever they did in the backseat of a car. It wasn't a French woman who was 28. It wasn't her. God took mercy on me. Anyway, that was really something. And I have a kerosene lantern in my basement not too far from the Cat's Eye. These are good memories, It isn't on, though. But yeah. There's a story. I didn't even know how to take off her, what do you call it? Bustier. She had a bustier out, which occasionally I remember, and I didn't know what it was. And she had to show me how to take it off. And I was thinking, a woman who puts this on is assuming someone else is going to take it off later in the day. I was 17.
Right.
17.
Yeah, those things aren't worn to be... Well, never mind. I have the same reaction you had.
The French invented sex. I don't know. But boy, she was stunning. It was stunning. Because it was kind of an Audrey-ish thing, except she was 11 years older than me. It wasn't bad that Audrey was 19. That's not a bad thing. But it did break the ice.
That was your fourth book, Hot Sex and Small Change, I think?
No, there's a fifth one. And the fifth one is Miracle on... it has 2 titles. It's meant to evoke the movie with Natalie Wood. It's Miracle on 51st Street. And then it's a Chicago newsstand Christmas story. And in the word story, the O, there's a little Jewish star. And that's me. And it's about 18 Christian employees and me. The only time in the 20 years that I was in business that Christmas Eve happened on Saturday night. And I was selling 5,000 newspapers every Sunday and 1,100 New York Times, which came in 5 parts. And I had an army of employees. And if somebody was sick on Saturday or Sunday, they'd cover each other. And it didn't matter if they were Lutheran or Episcopalian. And I didn't care if they had to stuff newspapers or sell newspapers. And we had this whole thing of boys, every car length, lined up on the street. So the car traffic, we perfected it over the years. And it worked like a charm, except, oh my God, they're all Christians. And one by one, these kids, mostly kids, called and said, I can't come. And I said, why? Like I didn't know. And she said, well, it's Christmas Eve. I got to be home for Christmas. They said, oh, all right. And I kind of sunk into this area. I had built up this fantastic business, and my customers weren't going to understand how instead of having a dozen people there on Sunday morning, there'd be me, stuffing and selling 5,000 newspapers. And what the story does is detail precisely, since nobody knows what it's like to run a newsstand in 77, or that I had to go down to Union Station to get the newspapers. I have to explain everything to the public so they understand what's the big deal. The big deal was you can't do it. And I gave examples. Okay, what other things like this happened on Sunday? Oh yeah, the Alamo. The Alamo ended on a Sunday. What else? Custer. Custer was killed on a Sunday. And I was trying to give it this whole aura of disaster. Anyway, the story's about what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Can't read it. Can't read the story, but it's true, and I hope somebody makes a movie out of it because it's great. It's a great story, better than the Santa Claus in the movie. This is true.
So you have a website that has a lot of your writing on it?
I didn't pay him to say these things. I have a website called Different Slants with a zillion stories organized by topic on the right, and nothing's fiction. So if you don't believe it, that's too bad. And what else? Unlike the newsstand, it's open 24 hours a day. It's Different Slants is one word. Slants is SLANTS.com. And I have a Facebook page. And what is it? I don't know what to call it. I guess it's my name. It's under Robert Katzman. I have no idea how to tell you to get to it. But it's on Bob Katzman, maybe.
You're on Facebook as Robert Katzman.
I am. I don't know, but if you find out, I'll find out later. But anyway, you can go look there too.
Great. Well, I think that's just about all the time we have today. I want to thank our special guest, Bob Katzman, for such a wonderful story. That was really, really, really remarkable. And thank you for sharing that and sharing so much of yourself with us.
I didn't intend to. You got more than I intended to give you. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for letting me do it. Anytime.
It's our pleasure. I want to say a couple words about the Kenosha Writers Guild. We're a free organization. We meet twice a month on the second and third Thursday of every month. The third Thursday meetings are open meeting where anybody can come in and read whatever they have or just sit and listen and find out what we're all about. The second Thursday, we alternate between in-depth critiques where we submit our stuff in advance and take a harder look at it. And then we have workshops and guests who come in for panel discussions, so on every now and then. So we meet at Carthage College in the, I'm trying to remember the name of the building. Strass. Thanks. Yeah. It's Jim Payne, by the way. The Strass building, room 194. And we start at 6:30. So if you got something that you want to share with other people, it's a great place to start. I want to thank our engineer, Troy McDonald, Jim Payne for sitting in here, being a silent partner.
And the gorgeous Joyce, who elevated the spirit of every guy in the room.
The gorgeous Joyce.
Gorgeous Joyce Plakowski. I don't know.
Joyce Plakowski.
Either. Yes.
So yeah, she's our studio audience for today. And so anyhow, I want to thank Bob Katzman once again for such a wonderful story and sharing it with us. So until next time, the world needs your stories, as Chris DeGuerre used to say. Thank you.